Victoria Smithwick, it's not often I come across other Victorias, so I'm joyous, is moderating a panel discussion, a really relevant and important and impactful conversation on navigating mental wellness as a community leader with some of my homies here, Jeff Roe, Max Pete, Morgan Wood, and Negin Sairafi. Please, Negin, if I'm mispronouncing, definitely course correct me now.
It's Negin Sairafi.
Negin, okay. Thank you so much for that clarity. And Victoria, I'm going to pass it off.
Awesome. Thank you, Victoria. Very great. I'm excited to be here with all of you today. As Victoria mentioned, we are going to be having a great discussion, and I know we have about 20 minutes, so we're going to get really deep and into it right away with this discussion on mental health as a community manager in an industry where we are often pouring so much into others and the importance of really taking care of ourselves. So I am Adaire Smithwick, Victoria Adaire Smithwick, as you may know, and I am the community manager at Uscreen. I'm excited to kick it over to my panelists to briefly introduce themselves. Max, I'll start with you. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what you do and why you were excited to be here today?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Max. I'm a community engagement program manager at Square. I started last week, so very, very new. And yeah, I'm excited to just be here because I feel like mental health is such an important topic that a lot of community builders are now starting to talk about more. And it's just really important for us to keep top of mind because we're very passionate about the work that we do.
Awesome. Morgan, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Max said, I am also very passionate about mental health for community managers, and I am the community manager over at HiveBright. And we just recently launched a podcast talking about that called Community Therapy. So I'm so excited to be here to help talk about the stories that so many of our community managers have shared. And with Max, when you said that so many people are passionate about this, I think it's a pivotal moment right now in our industry to be talking about mental health. So I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Morgan. All right, Negin.
Hi, I'm Negin Sairafi, and I lead marketing and community at Disco. And previously, a lot of my career has been community powered or community based. And if you've ever done community work, as most of the folks here have, and some people watching, you know that burnout is real because community is a labor of love. And if we can't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of other people. And so I'm really passionate about this topic and really excited to have this conversation.
I love that. And last but certainly not least, Jeffrey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Roe. I am the head of community at Arrival. Been working as a community manager for about 12 years now and super excited to talk about this topic. I feel like it's getting talked about everywhere. In this industry, we've been talking about it for, I want to say, at least a few years now. And yeah, it's top of mind for me. It's top of mind for everyone. And I think we're all sort of at this point where we're doing work in our own lives to address it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all so much. I'm excited to dive right into this conversation. And really what you all mentioned is that mental health and taking care of yourselves, boundaries are all very important in this field of work that we're in. And so I want to just get right into it, Jeff, and we'll start with you. What does taking care of your mental health mean to you? And how do you do that in your daily life?
Yes, great question. So for me, mental health, mental wellness is really about embracing spirituality and committing to your own personal growth. I think, being that mental wellness is such a top of mind topic these days, we all tend to fall into some of the buzzworthiness of it and associate mental wellness with, okay, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go and, get a mani-pedi, or I'm going to, go for a massage. I'm going to, tune into my Calm app. I'm going to try and meditate a little bit. But I think it extends a bit beyond that. I think these are all tools and activities that we can use to address some of the things that are going on within us, right? But for me, it's more than that. It's also like, are you doing the work to heal yourself, right? Everybody's going through something in life. And in order to better serve the communities that we work with, I think we need to understand that very succinctly and know that in order to, we're there to support our communities and we can do all that stuff, but are we doing the work for ourselves to heal what's going on inside of us? Because a lot of folks are looking for that as well. And to your point, we can't help others until we take care of ourselves first. And yeah, I've got like just a number of different memes that are related to this topic that have been just coming up like in the recent past couple of days that are related to this topic. So I'll start off with one. That I have some others that I can share too as we go into the discussion, but I'll start with this one, right? So people pray for the cake, then the universe gives them the batter, the oil, the icing, a pan, and an oven, and they get frustrated and they leave the kitchen. Let that sink in. Sometimes you have everything right in front of you, but how bad do you want it? So I'll pause there.
I like that. I like that a lot. Negin, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, I think like just, adding to what Jeffrey said, just your practices, your personal practices are so important. Sometimes in specific industries, like especially we forget that we're human. We're human. We're dealing with humans, and humans are, they can fall apart and they have needs and they have good days and bad days. And that includes both the community leaders as well as members of our community. So how might we treat ourselves with the same level of care and compassion that we're bringing to our communities? Because that also, I really deeply believe in energetic exchanges, whether we're aware of them or not. Whatever we're showing up with to a room, whether it's a real, physical space or a virtual space, people are going to feel that. And it's like, because we're human, we're always communicating, we're always connecting. And so for me, it's a practice of mindfulness, because if I'm not taking care of myself and my practices, how can I give my best to the people that I care for? And I think there's also like a distinction for me, especially when it comes to community work, around caring about versus caring for. And as a community leader, you're often caring for, and that's a different type of investment and energy exchange than caring about. I care about a lot of things, but I only have energy to care for so many things. And I have to care for myself as well. I'm included in that bucket. So I think my practices have always been around, making sure I'm taking care of mind, body, spirit, whether that's meditation, writing, being in my own community so that I have that support system as well. Like asking for help, asking for support, ensuring that I have the mentorship and the spaces to express myself and release whatever energies I need to release in order to again, show up really mindfully and intentionally for my people.
I love that differentiation between caring for versus just caring about. Thank you for that. Max, do you have any tools that you use on a daily basis to take care of your mental health?
I do. So one of them is this free app, I think from the creators of Pinterest, actually, their design team. It's called How We Feel. And it's an app that you can track your emotions. So you can kind of set it up how you want. Like if you wanted to track one a day, twice a day, 3 times a day. I usually do morning, afternoon, and evening. And it gives you a broad range of emotions. If you're feeling anxious or happy or content, and gives you like a little area of leaving yourself a voice note of why you're feeling this. Or you can write down of why you're feeling this too, who you're with, like what you're doing. And for me, it's been super helpful because I consider myself like a very like anxious person. And so in the past, when I would have like anxiety or when I would be overwhelmed, I would be like, that's my whole day. I was anxious a whole day. I was overwhelmed the whole day. And when I can like review this app and look at back in my past month or certain parts of my day, I'm like, oh, actually, no, it was a minor part of it. It was just a little bit, or this is what caused it. And it wasn't like as big of a deal as I let it on to be. And so I use that app a lot now. I know Apple is integrating a similar feature into their health app where you can do daily check-ins as well for your mood. And so that is like my main big one now. Besides creating my own Well, I use a template from Rosie Sherry for a Notion template, where I track my daily like habits, but I mainly use it for my daily like what's my day looking like? How am I feeling? What's on my plate? Like, what are my blockers of today? Like, what happened or didn't happen? And I use that as my daily, like, just tracking of how things are going. So yeah, between Notion and How We Feel are like my main go-tos.
I like that a lot. I love Notion. Morgan, do you have any tools that you use to help your mental health daily, weekly, monthly, whatever that might look like?
Yeah, so for me personally, it looks like journaling, so a lot more analog. But that typically is how I find I release my emotions best, is being able to think it out and write it down. But then, similar to Max, using Notion to also keep track of it when my brain's running, and then setting that time on my calendar. So it's kind of that 3 pillars for me. It's first making sure I block the time so I can, decompress at the end of the day, journal it out, whether it's work or personal, whatever. And then, making sure that I'm able to follow up and keep that consistent. It's not perfect every day, but it is something that I can turn to and use when I need to.
I love journaling. I think journaling is a really great practice for those of us who have very active minds and like tend to live a lot up here. So I appreciate that. So another big part of this conversation is really establishing healthy boundaries. And you've all kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to get a little bit deeper into that. So Negin, how do you set up boundaries in your daily life to really, going back to what you said, caring for people and having that capacity? How do you make sure that you have that capacity through boundaries?
I'm sure this would resonate with some of the folks here. When you're like a community leader, you are accessible. Like you are just like, I want to be there. I want to do everything I can. If somebody has a question at 12 in the morning, I'm going to answer it. It's like, because there's so much innate passion, and you can really only do it if you actually do have that passion for the work. And I think that sometimes what can happen, even though it's coming from a good place, is that you do end up over time, if you continuously give of yourself in ways that maybe aren't aligned with your highest good, you do overgive. And when you overgive, sometimes you don't notice right away when you're like starting to feel depleted. And then one day you wake up and you're like, oh, it's weird. Like I don't know why I feel like foggy or stuck or depressed or anxious or whatever it may be. And I think for me, I really, really think of boundaries, and boundaries is like such a harsh word. Like even when I say it, it sounds so like harsh, but it's really, this was in a movie I watched like a while ago. It was like a loving fence around like, this is where I take care of me. And this is, I take care of me so I can take care of you and us. And so we can all be better together. And so for me, it's an act of love. Truly, it's an act of love for me to take care of myself. And sometimes I find the overgiving is actually not coming from an altruistic place either. Like it's coming from a place that's maybe not like prioritizing our own needs for whatever reason. And so boundaries also help me practice taking responsibility for taking care of myself. So it's like there's so much responsibility that comes with being a community leader. And the number one responsibility is ensuring that you've set up the right systems, structures, boundaries, spaces, time, support systems to help you thrive. And so I see it as this like almost non-negotiable, and also as, like I said, an act of love.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I love the loving fence analogy because it's true. Boundaries, that word can feel a little bit harsh or like strict. I want to take a pause for a moment and just shout out to the audience. If you have questions for us, share them. And we are going to hopefully answer some at the end of this if we have some time. But I want to turn it over to you, Max, again. How do you practice boundaries? I know you mentioned some tools that you have, but is there a way, or is there a specific boundary in mind that helps you maintain your energy and well-being?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say it's a work in progress. Like some days are better than others, and even having all these things, tools, sometimes I still slip up. What really works for me is having someone to hold me accountable. So if that's like my wife who is like, hey, like why are you working right now? Like it's off. Or it's like my coworker who knows I'm taking a day off and they see me in Slack and they send me a message and be like, Max, like it's good. We got it. Like you can be off. Sometimes I just need that little push, and having that accountability like really is helpful. Because as Negin was saying earlier, like we're very passionate about this work. And even though we're like off or we're on vacation or whatever it is, we're like, oh, like I just want to check in to help someone. I want to do this. And so having that extra boundary level person, accountability person to like really like, hey, like you're good, take the time off, has been really helpful for me.
Accountability is a big one. Raise your hand if you've ever checked while you're on vacation. I know that quite well. Yes, all of us are here with our hand raised. Going off of that, speaking of vacation, let's talk about burnout and how to avoid burnout. And so, Morgan, I'm curious, what do you think are the most common signs and symptoms of burnout? Have you experienced this yourself? And then how do you cope with burnout or recover from that?
Oh man, I will do my best to cover all of that. I think for me personally, definitely have experienced that. Typically, it's when you are still feeling stress and you're not able to recharge when you have rest. So what I mean by that is, even though you've taken time for yourself, I have a very active imagination. I believe that's what you said earlier as well. And so I still find myself going through the worst case scenario, or maybe I'm stuck on a problem and my mind keeps going. So typically that's an indicator for me, having gone through burnout before and, trying to recover from it, that okay, maybe I'm slipping back. So oftentimes that's one of the biggest indicators, is you're not able to recharge. The other is you're feeling that you are not able to set those boundaries or have those conversations because you're overwhelmed with cynicism. And that's not to say toxic positivity is the solution, but it is that you may not be able to take a step back and remove your own emotions from the situation. And again, it's not a cut and dry thing. There are going to be situations where emotions are going to be involved. We're working with humans and we're human ourselves. So oftentimes those are the two biggest indicators, at least in my experience, that typically points to burnout.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Jeff, how do you deal with burnout?
I would say just, trying to stay as proactive about noticing the symptoms. So, to Negin's point about practicing mindfulness, being very aware of what's going on within your body, your emotions, your mood. I think for me, when I'm starting to exhibit some of those symptoms, it often comes in the form of, we've all experienced being hangry, right? You become very short with people and just like, hey, and as community managers, we're also very warm and inviting. So once I notice my mood starting to shift there, and it's starting to manifest itself to others, it's like, whoa, I'm not being me right now. I need to like chill, I need to like, dial it back in terms of like having this sense of urgency to respond to everything. It's like, whoosh, pause.
That's so good about dialing it back and that sense of urgency. Again, another thing that I think many people can resonate with. We have about 5 minutes left. So if you all are up for it, I'd love to take some questions from the audience. We have some rolling through. So going off of Negin's point about using your own community for support, how do you balance vulnerability in seeking support with creating an environment where people feel like they can trust you? And Negin, I'll turn that one to you.
Excellent question. So I think maybe I'll just add a little nuance that the community that you are caring for doesn't have to be the community that is also caring for you. I think it's healthy to have the separation, and maybe you have your own kind of support system over here, and then you're caring for this community here. And then the thing I'll say to the vulnerability piece is that, what kind of permissions and conditions do you want to create in your community? Do you want folks to show up vulnerably? Do you want people to have the space to share where they're really at and to be open and transparent? Because if that's the community you're creating and that's what you hope for, then I would hope that that's also how you're showing up and modeling behavior. And then I also think there's like really, really, leadership practices around not emotional dumping, understanding, professional boundaries, like where's the line, right? And everyone can answer that question for themselves. But I think vulnerability, I sound like Brene Brown, but vulnerability is a superpower when expressed in a way that really honors everyone's boundaries, honors the boundaries of the space, and also it's consensual. I think that's the other thing is like so much of the sharing that happens in communities needs to be deeply rooted in consent and the agreements that you've created for that community, and the person that has to follow those most of the people that are like holding that space. And so as a space holder, I think vulnerability can be used effectively in the right ways.
I love that. I think I completely agree with that. And I think vulnerability is one of those, it's kind of like it's that balancing act. So Jeff, I'm curious to hear from you. How have you bridged the topic of mental health with your team at work? If you have crossed that bridge, what are some of the tips maybe that you would give someone who maybe isn't feeling supported and wants to have that conversation?
Wow, that's great. Fortunately for me, I'm very, very grateful for the fact that I work with a very special group of people who are very in touch with their emotions. So we are able to communicate very open and fluidly. What I would recommend to anyone who's not feeling supported in that way is, if you're not getting that with the people you're working with every day, you need to find someone else within your network who can fill that gap for you. Because we all have to be in touch with our feelings, and take the steps to really address what's going on within us. So you have to find that support somewhere.
Thank you for that. Max or Morgan, do you have anything to add to that? We'll start with you, Morgan.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I think, like Jeff said, finding that support somewhere, and then also take it step by step. So for myself, throughout my career, when I haven't felt supported, for me personally, it's first finding somebody who I can at least, just have some chit chat with, and then eventually find my way to those who are in your organization that are more open to having conversations about feelings. It may not be your direct manager. It may be someone who is a peer. And so take it slow and trust your gut when you're navigating these situations, because I'm sure there is somebody within your team or your network who wants to have those conversations. But I believe Negin said it earlier, you want to make sure that you're honoring the boundaries. So typically you can suss out the situation if you take it slower.
Thank you, Morgan. Any closing thoughts from you, Max, on that same topic of bridging that conversation at work?
Yeah. I'll say, like, from my previous experience in the past is like, just if I didn't know the sport was there yet, or I've been new or whatever it was, I just kind of start modeling that behavior to hopefully I get it returned back to me. And so, like, me just going out to be like, hey, like, how's everyone feeling? Like, maybe I'll just do a weekly self-care check-in post with the team to kind of start small. And then, or maybe like, hey, like, let's just get on a call and just talk about how we're doing. And modeling that behavior a little bit to like seeing how that goes. And if the team is into it and we all feel supported, then we can like ramp that up. But sometimes I just like go for it and see like how it goes in the beginning.